The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Thrilled to be here with you on this very rainy day in Los Angeles. I don't know about the weather for everybody else, but all I can say is if you're in the Midwest or on the East Coast, get ready because those storms that they're saying are coming towards you, we're experiencing the rain here, and let me just tell you, it's a lot, so be ready for it. But thrilled to be here with you on this Thursday morning. We're going to be live for the next 2 hours talking with you about autism from a 360-degree perspective so that no matter where you are, who you are in the autism community, hopefully we're going to have something for you that you'll find inspirational, informational. We really want to help you to get to all the things that you want to. As I said, we're going to be live for the next 2 hours, and there's lots of different ways that you can connect with us. So Traven's going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect. While he's doing that, I want to remind you that our homepage is still autism-live.com. You can see it there on the screen, but when you go there, it's going to look vastly different because we've changed our website. It was in beta for a while. I want to hear from you guys, hear if you like it and if it's helping you to find access to the information that you need in a better way, because that's really what it was designed to do. If you really just are having a hard time, because sometimes I don't like change, you know, if you really want to go and experience the show the old way, you can go to oldautism-live.com and you can watch it on the old way for at least a while. We're going to leave it there for a while so people can transition, because change is hard, right? And it is an entirely different way of looking at it. Now on the new page, you'll see at the top there is a bar, and it includes the little toy icon, and there should be a thing that says live. It should be a flashing red button. Once you click on that, it will open up this screen and you will be able to watch us live from that page. The chat button now is at the bottom of the page, and it's not taking up half the page. You know what I mean? So it's an open window. You'll click on it, it opens up, and you can type away and write into us, and then I'll be able to see what you guys say. I love it because it gives me a date and a timestamp, which just makes my life very happy. And so we were doing that yesterday. It was great. So feel free to write in. But there's lots of other different ways that you can write into us too. If you're watching us on Facebook, if you're watching us on YouTube, on Periscope, any of the different places that we're live, including Twitter, you can write into us there. So all those different ways, and I love that it's free, all those ways. We podcast the entire show to iTunes. You can watch it there. Not live, but later on today you can watch it there, and you can choose whether you want to watch it with just sound or with picture and sound. So you can take us with you in the car. I know some of you have written in and said that you like to do that, so thank you for figuring that out. There are other people who are like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that we could watch you in the car. It's a great thing. Okay, it's Thursday, you know, and Thursdays we do things a little bit differently. Before we get started with that, I'd like to always remind you on Thursdays that we so enjoy bringing you experts in the field of autism and inspirational stories. I just want to be 100% clear that you don't confuse me as one of the experts. I'm not. My role in this is, first and foremost, I'm an autism mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He is now brilliant in 15, and nothing's stopping him. He is an amazing young man because we got the help and support that we needed that was right for him at the right time, and we took advantage of it. And it was a great intervention. It just so happens that that was done by card, and it's why I sing their praises, because they gave me back my kid. There's just no two ways about that, right? But I'm not an expert in autism. I am not an expert even in my kid. He will be the first person to tell you that. I'm a former teacher. So I love education and I love learning about autism, but most especially now I love to be able to pay it forward and help somebody else to get to the things that are right for them. I'm all about supporting the autism community in its entirety. And I count that as parents, teachers, practitioners, grandparents, aunts, uncles, but most especially, of course, individuals who are on the autism spectrum. I believe that we are all a part of the autism community. We're all searching for resources and inspiration, hope, and results, right? And what we want result-wise is different for everybody. This is not one size fits all. So please understand that much I know. Not an expert in autism, but that much I know. And I just want to help you to get to the resources that you need, that are right for you, whatever they are. So, you know, I said, give me a hand. We hold on together. 𝗃𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗍, right? So, don't confuse me for an expert, though. That I am not. Although, how exciting is this that I am leaving today to go to San Francisco, and I am going to the ABAI conference. It is the International Conference for Autism done by ABA. This is the group of professionals that do ABA. And you know, ABA is a huge field and a lot of it has nothing to do with autism, right? But this is a conference where just ABA people who are dealing with autism get together, and it's their international. People from all over the world are coming, and I get to be one of the guest speakers this weekend. So not an expert, but I get to be a guest speaker at this international conference. I am so excited that the talk that I'm giving is the parent perspective, how to get a parent to buy in to ABA services. You know, this is a subject that I am very passionate about, trying to help ABA professionals understand from the parent perspective what's getting in our way to prevent us from doing a great quality ABA program so that we can get that stuff out of the way. And once we get that out of the way, our kids fly, right? But we need some support. There are things that we need. There's ways that those professionals can help us to get to the point where we go, I get it. I want to be a part of this. And that's what I'm really passionate about. That's what I'm speaking on. I can't hardly believe that. I have to be honest with you. It's very humbling to me. But, and I'll let you know all about that. I might even do some live feeds over the weekend just to let you know. I'm taking the equipment with me. Who knows? I might get some good interviews. Anyway, so that's, but don't confuse me with an expert. Confuse me with somebody who cares very deeply and passionately about this, right? Having said all of that, we like to start every Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are the experts talking about. We give you the actual definition, then, which we often, well, I make fun of it usually because it's something that should be made fun of. And then we give you the working definition, a way that you can kind of practically begin to understand. Often that makes the BCBAs break out into hives, and we don't mean to do that, but don't feel bad if you don't get it the first time. We go back over some of these terms because sometimes it's the third time that we do it that you go, okay, wait a second, I think I got that, right? And that's the way you acquire the jargon, right? So today we're visiting an oldie but a goodie. It's the first autism jargon term that I think I learned besides autism, right? And that is antecedent. This is one of the, it's one of those words you're going to hear right in the beginning when you're starting ABA, and it's one of the first things that puts us off, right? When people start talking about, well, what's the antecedent? I don't know about you, but I wanted to say, could we just talk in plain English? Like, I don't know, you know, I've been a college professor and been on college campuses with very intelligent people talking about very intelligent, high-level things. I don't recall anybody ever using the word antecedent in a sentence before I was in the field of autism. You know, but it is a very specific thing, and it has a big impact. So let's take a look at what the actual definition of an antecedent is. There it is. Anything that occurs or is present immediately before the behavior of interest. Oh, well, that seems clear, right? I don't know about you, but taken out of context, I'm like, what? Anything that occurs or is present immediately before the behavior of interest. Let's take a look at what our working definition is and see if we can't piece this together. The working definition is what happened before. And let me tell you that in the field of ABA, as your child or your student, you start to think of this through an ABA perspective, this is your first question. Something happens, ask yourself immediately, wait a second, what happened beforehand? Because behaviors don't happen in a vacuum. We talk a lot on the show about the 3-term contingency. And what it means is that when a behavior happens, it's the ABCs of behavior, right? So the A is the antecedent. Something happens, and then a behavior happens, that's the B, and then there's a consequence. This is happening right now in your life and in my life. In all things that are living, this ABC happens over and over and over again all day. The example that I like to give is, let's take a behavior that we all do at some day. At some point on every given day, we get up and turn a light on. And why do you do that? And the antecedent is different in a lot of different cases. But what happens right before you turn a light on? Is it that you've come into the room and you can't see in the room, so you turn on the light? Is it that you were sitting in the room and the light changed and your eyes were having to squint and you go, oh, I got to get up and go turn on the light? Something happened that prompted you to get up and turn the lights on. It's a behavior you do all the time. And so the behavior is that you turn on the light. And what's the consequence? There's light in the room, and whatever was happening before is changed. It just is. And that's reinforcing to us. It's good when you can see, right? If it's gotten dark and you want to be able to see and you flick on the lights, the reward is that the lights came on. And that is enough to continue to reward us to do it again and again and again. So, for instance, your child goes to school today and the note comes home saying, you know, Johnny kicked so-and-so. And a lot of times you get that, and there's a lot of emotion that comes into that, and instead you want to train yourself to ask, well, what happened beforehand? And a lot of times people will get they're like, well, it doesn't matter what happened beforehand. He kicked him. Why aren't you outraged about that? Well, you're not going to be able to fix him kicking him until we know what happened beforehand and what happened afterward. So the first question you're going to ask is, what happened before? That's the antecedent. And then you ask, and what the consequence was. So the teacher, after they get over that, well, he kicked him, it doesn't matter what happened before. I know, but if we're going to fix it, we got to know what the antecedent is. And they say, well, you know, Johnny called him a name and he kicked him. Well, that's a very different thing than he just walked by and kicked him, right? Because we can work with that, knowing that, okay, he felt injured and we need to deal with self-control when somebody insults you, right? We're not like having him be off the hook, but it's a different thing. He was doing it to get him to stop insulting him. That's a different thing than something else. So we need to know what happened before. And then you want to say to the teacher, and so what happened as a result of him kicking him? Was he taken out of the classroom? Did he miss recess? What did we do as a consequence? Because the power in all this is that when we know what the antecedent is, sometimes we can prevent the antecedent from happening. And we call that an antecedent modification or antecedent strategies, right? And so when you're at an IEP meeting or when you're talking to ABA professionals and they're like, okay, what's happening? They're always looking for the function of the behavior. And the function is, they figure that out through the antecedent to behavior and the consequence. Oh, the function of this behavior is he wanted that child to stop insulting him. So we would, you know, although I'm going to back up for a second. I'm not somebody who can diagnose that because they would look into it further. It might be that he wanted attention drawn to it so that the teacher would say, stop insulting him, right? I don't quite know. There would be more investigation. I'm not somebody who does that investigation, but a trained ABA professional would. They're going to find out what the function is, and then we're going to deal with it. But part of how we would deal with that is, you know, teaching. You always want to teach something, right? So we would teach the child that when somebody insults you, it is not appropriate to kick them back, right? There are other things that you can do when somebody insults you, and how to deal with the feelings of when somebody has insulted you. And you want to kick them, but you can't, because those are the rules of society. So we would teach the child self-regulation, having the ability to not act on impulses. A lot of lessons here, right? We would teach them how to advocate for themselves when somebody is insulting them, all these different things, but we would also work with the other child and say, stop insulting him, right? And then maybe the kicking fully goes away, but we would also put in a consequence strategy that when he kicks, he does not get access to things that he wants. I know everybody wants to punish, right? But the truth of the matter is that the jury is in on punishment, and punishment strategies usually don't really maintain the behavior that we want. That having access to things that we do want will prevent us from doing the behavior. That is true. So just not having access to the things that we want if we're doing everything right, hopefully that will work if we've got the right function of the behavior. But antecedent is what happened before. Anytime somebody is telling you the behavior of somebody and the behavior is not something that you want to foster, you need to ask the question, what happened before? It's the antecedent. That's why they talk about it. So it's Thursday, and on Thursday, we like to kick off the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what are those experts talking about, and what does this have to do with me, and ultimately, how can this help me to get to the progress that I want for me or for my family member, and can we do it as quickly and efficiently and inexpensively as possible, right? That's where the jargon comes in. We like to start with the actual definition, right? Which is often like so convoluted that we can't make sense of it if we're not experts, and a lot of us are not. And then we give you a working definition, which often makes our experts a little bit crazy, but we have to have a way of getting a way in, right? So 𝗃𝗏𝗂 is showing you that today's term, there's by 𝗃𝗏𝗜𝗄. Tomorrow you're going to see us talking about 𝗃𝗏𝗜𝗄 a little bit. So our term for today is escape maintained behavior. And this is a phrase that you will hear people use, escape maintained behavior. What does that mean? So let's go to our actual definition, which is one of those definitions that I really love, where we just rearrange the words in the thing that we're trying to define. Behavior that is maintained by the ability to escape. There we go. Escape maintained behavior is behavior that is maintained by escape. If you didn't know what escape maintained behavior is, are you any closer? Right? This is my whole, I'm like, let's use different words. Can we use different words? So let's move on to our working definition, because this is we're all pretty familiar with this. This is things we do to get out of doing something, and it works, right? So first I'm going to put this in a context of us, like things that we do to get out of something else. And it can be anything, right? You might be feeling something that you don't want to feel, and so you eat something, right? And then instantly you're not having that feeling, and then that's escape maintained behavior. You will continue doing that because it worked. It got you out of feeling the way that you felt, right? I always think about with our kiddos, the example of the kiddo who doesn't really want to take a bath, right? And so right before taking, we say it's time to take the bath, and we try to make it all fun, and we go to the bathroom, and the kid sees the bathtub and they have some fears about it. And so the kid throws a tantrum and lays down on the floor and kicks and screams and whatever. Now you have to deal with the tantrum, which means they won because they're not in the bathtub. Do you see how that works? And as long as I know that if I throw a tantrum outside the bathtub, you delay the getting into the bath for even 2 minutes, I'm going to do that, right? If I really don't like the bath, it's working for me, right? There are tons of ways. Honestly, I think the best example of escape maintained behavior are autism parents, because there's a lot of stuff that we go, oh, I just can't do that. And so we find a way out of it. Now, is it normal and natural to want to have a way out of something? Yes. Yes, 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 yes. And we find ourselves when we're on the other side of it and we're like, just do it, right? And why do we have to go through the tantrum every time there's a bath? And right? And we get frustrated with that. Just do it. But when does that ever work? Saying to people, well, you just need to suck it up, buttercup, right? Me and taxes, boy, ugh. I really don't want to do the taxes every year. It's not my favorite thing. And everybody says, well, take it to an accountant. See, that's not the part that I don't like. The part I don't like is when you have to get the receipts together. And you have to do that whether you go to the accountant or not. So that's what I'm trying to escape. And for me, as long as I can put it off, the better. Right? And it works for me because I get the reprieve from it. Yeah, does it come back to bite me? Then I'm up in the middle of April, which is, a busy time for autism, right? When you're trying to cover autism and suddenly I'm having to do the taxes, right? So I want you to think about, first of all, what do you do to avoid doing things that you don't want to do? And does it work? Does it work for even a minute? Because this is the thing about escape maintain behavior. If it works for a minute, we're going to keep doing it, right? And what are the ways that stop you from doing that? Well, one thing that stops people from doing that is when the consequence becomes so difficult, you stop avoiding the thing that you were escaping, right? Or you learn something new that helps it to not be so aversive, or you stop getting the reprieve if when, I'm going to use myself as the example, if when I was feeling anxious and I ate, if it didn't take away the feeling of being anxious, eventually I would stop eating to try to avoid because it's not working, right? So for the example with the bathtub, with the kiddo who throws the tantrum to get out of getting in the bathtub, it really becomes important for us to teach them ways to ask for a break beforehand, to work on whatever aspect of the bathtub is aversive to them. It might be that we need to make the water colder or warmer. It might be that we need to make more fun toys in the bath, right? Or it might be that when they start the tantrum, we pick them up and while they're freaking out, we make sure they're safe and don't put so much water in that they're, there's any potential for drowning, but they go right into the bathtub, tantrum or not. Because if tantruming doesn't put a pause on getting in the bath, eventually I'm gonna stop doing that, right? So there are lots of different ways that we wanna help a person. We don't want to just be like, get over it. We also don't want to just do the hardcore thing for some circumstances where we think that there's a sensory issue or an anxiety issue or a fear issue. One of the great examples that I have in my life was that my son learned, smart boy, we would sit down to do homework and we'd do all the homework and he enjoyed a bunch of the homework. We'd get to the math homework, right? And what he would do is he would drop his pencil on the floor because he by accident did that once. And then he got down on the floor and was on the floor and started, doing something on the floor. And he realized that my attention wandered and that it took me a minute to be like, hey, what are you doing down there? Come on, let's finish homework, right? So he learned, when my pencil drops, I have an excuse to go to the floor and I'm going to get at least a minute out of this, right? And then he started milking it further. So he would try to crawl away and get at one of his stuffed animals and, do something. Because we're talking, this was kindergarten, first grade, right? So now it became a thing where he wouldn't just drop the pencil. He would take the pencil and go like this and be like, oops, right? Like early acting class for my son. Oops. And then he would have to go across the room to get it, and there would be his Buzz Lightyear toy right next to it, which then he would start to play with, right? And now it takes me a minute to get out of the chair and go over and bring him back because I'm not as agile as I once was, right? So he was getting a couple of minutes out of it. And then I went, oh, we got a problem here. And it was made clear to us that we couldn't have that gap, that if he dropped a pencil, that he didn't get to pick it up, I had to have this ginormous cup of sharpened pencils on the table. And as soon as he went like this, another pencil was put in his hand and his hand was put on the paper. And I'd go, look, and he'd be like, no, and I'd go, no, we're right here. and he didn't get the break from it. Even if I had to be gently moving his hand, continuing the homework, there was no break. So we went through one homework session from where we went through half the pencils, and we just kept putting, and I had a therapist there because you can't do this kind of stuff by yourself. And he learned, oh, okay, that's not working. And the pencil thing stopped. Now, in a different time from that, not while this was happening, they also were teaching him how to appropriately ask me and say, Mom, can I have a break? And then he was able to say, can I take a break? And I was able to say, yes, you can take a break from homework. We're going to set it. You can go play with the Buzz Lightyear for 5 minutes, and then we have to come back. It all worked, right? But escape maintain behavior happens because the escape worked. And so we need to look at all the different variables and figure out, because different things we have different amount of control over. There's some things where you can't keep jamming a pencil into their hand, right? But we need to look at all of the different aspects of it to be able to change escape maintain behavior. But I do want to ask you as a parent, those of you who are parents watching, what escape maintain behavior are you using with therapy? With dealing with hard situations that you just have been avoiding? I'm very fond of saying to the therapist, don't let the parents, because a lot of us don't like parent training. It's just a fact. I don't mean to laugh about it, but it's like not our favorite thing, because we feel like, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not as good as the 19-year-old who comes to my office who's so proficient at it, right? And so we choose to sort of avoid it, right? And it works for us because we say, oh, I can't do that today, and it works. And the therapist let us off the hook. But the truth is not what we need in the long run. A lot of times escape maintain behavior is avoiding something that you really need. So ask yourself, what can you do to make the parent training better? What can you do? Can you link it up to the fact that your child is going to make more progress if you do it? And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you have to give yourself a reward for doing it and saying, I'm going to do the parent training today, and afterwards I'm going to reward myself with X, Y, or Z. I'm going to go get that manicure that I've been saying I was going to do. I'm going to find some time for myself. I'm going to watch the show that I've had on DVR that I haven't been able to see. So parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism. We like to start the show on Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about? What does this have to do with me? Do I really need to know this term, right? In the beginning, I know I was just like you. I was like, stop. Why are you using these words? Why don't you just speak in a way that everybody understands? But then you realize, oh, well, this means specifically this, and that means this, and it saves time if you can just call it this because it's very specific. And then you're officially on the dark side, right? And you start using the term yourself. But until then, it can get in your way, and that's what I don't want to have happen. So we take this on one bite at a time, right? So today's term is, I'm pointing the wrong way, my Carol Merrill is off, stereotypy. Now, I love this because what we like to do here is we like to take a term, we give you the actual definition, we make fun of it, right? because that's my favorite pastime. And then we give you a working definition so that you begin to understand it. But this is one of those terms, stereotypy. The first time I heard somebody say this, I was like, are you talking about like an old-fashioned stereo? What did you say? Stereotypy? I made them spell it. I was like, what on earth are you saying? I'm like reading their lips, right? So let's take a look at what the actual definition of stereotypy is. Stereotypy is repetitive or ritualistic behavior, sometimes referred to as self-stimulatory behavior or stimming. Okay, it always bothered me when they would say ritualistic, and when I think of rituals, I'm like, you know, are these like religious rituals? What are we talking about here? But they are things that become very ritualized for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, which means that they need to do it this way over and over and over again. So, repetitive or ritualistic behavior, sometimes referred to as self-stimulatory behavior or stimming. So we've just added a bunch of jargon for you, right? But you probably have heard people talking about stimming. And I remember the first time I heard that term too, I was like, what are you saying? They're stemming? What is it, like STEM, like science, technology, you know, math? What are we talking about here? Stimming. And then somebody told me, well, it's self-stimulatory behavior. And the thing that they were describing in my son, that they were saying that's stimming and that's self-stimulatory behavior, I was like, no, it's not. He's not trying to stimulate himself. He's trying to calm himself down, right? So let's move on to our working definition and see if we can't figure out stereotypy here. So stereotypy are behaviors that are done repetitively, for instance, body rocking, hand flapping, lining up toys, and movie talk. These are things that our kids do that we usually put these in the category of something that the experts call automatic reinforcement. And what that means is that these things that they're doing, and they're doing them over and over again, right? Like I'm rocking, or it could be the hand flapping, or it could be the, you know, how some kids look up out of the corner of their eyes, or the one that my son engaged in when he was little was vocal stereotypy. So he would make those noises like R2-D2 and just go, you'd say something to him and he'd go, you know, I can't even do it as high as he could do it. So your kids might be doing something different. They might do that movie talk or the echolalia, but it's these things that they do repetitively. And often, because they do it repetitively, it can be something that starts to drive us a little buggy, right? But it's really important to remember that, and again, that self-stimulatory thing, I hate that term because it's a misnomer. It isn't always. Sometimes it's to stimulate themselves. Sometimes it's to calm themselves. But the main thing, and the reason why the experts call it automatically reinforcing, is because there's something about it that gives the individual a paycheck. Now, here's the really important part. They need a paycheck. This cannot be discounted. Like if you went to every person on the planet, neurotypical or otherwise, and said, I'm going to take away everything that makes your life work, we would have like chaos, right? If we just went to you and said, I'm sorry, all the things that you do to cope, we're going to take those away. And you know why? Because it's not socially acceptable what you're doing. Right? That would feel punitive. That would feel harmful. You would be like, well, I'm sorry that it's not okay for you, but this is what's working for me. So I think it's important that we understand it from this point of view first. Then we can look at it and go, all right, this behavior, what's wrong with it? Because if it's just that it's driving other people crazy, I think we could all grab a whoopee. Right? Because if this is helping somebody and it's just annoying to you, we all need to learn to adjust. But here's the rough part, is that this is hard to do to calm yourself down if you're learning how to write. Right? So what the teacher who's trying to teach them to write their name, which is a skill that's going to help them throughout the rest of their life, you know, this is more than just annoying, it's problematic. Because if it has to happen all the time, this isn't really useful. So we don't just take this away, we have to find a way for the individual to get the same paycheck out of some other behavior. And, you know, sometimes we will look at a behavior and go, well, it's making the other kids not be nice to the kid. I always find this really rough because I want to go in and teach the other kids, hey, you got to be more accepting, right? Not everybody's on that page. So in the meantime, we want to be able to help our kids, when possible, to have to fit into people who won't quite do the work to accept them, right? Makes me nuts too, but we you know, we want our kids to be accepted, right? But more importantly, if it's not productive, we want to be able to help them to either turn this on and off. Like, there's some parts of the day where you can do this. You absolutely can. And when you need to do this, we want to be able to give you another behavior that helps you to calm yourself. It may be that, you know, what you do is that you bounce your legs while you're doing this. It may be that we put you on a ball so that you can get a little bit of a bounce to the ball while you're writing. It's still going to be hard to write, but it won't be impossible. You can't write while you're doing this, right? So super important that we understand and appreciate, why are our kids doing this? It's not just random. If you are still being told by somebody, oh, well, that's just a random behavior that your child is doing and it has no meaning, I hope that you will stick up for your kiddo and say, no. This is an automatically reinforcing behavior, and we need to give it a very viable and reinforcing replacement. And maybe we need to give specific times during the day when they can freely do the stereotypy so that they get to download or upload whatever it is that they need to upload, okay? Be very wary of experts who just say, well, we're going to change that behavior. We're going to take that behavior because it's not socially acceptable and we're going to get rid of it, right? That's very inhumane. I don't agree with that, and I think that good ABA practitioners don't agree with that either. We want any good behavior intervention plan says, you know, there's an antecedent to try to make sure that if it's caused by stress, that we reduce their stress. There's a replacement behavior that's taught, right, that gives the same paycheck, and then we get to consequences for not doing the behavior. So if you have somebody who is doing this and we need them to write, we give them the replacement behavior, we put that in place, and then we reward them for being able to write instead of having to do this constantly. Okay? That is how we want to look at these behaviors. Thrilled to be here with you guys. Now, on some days of the week we have time for, we're going to be doing this a little bit more often because we get lots of requests for it. We like to do something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are they talking about. So today, for the first time, I can't believe this, we've never done this before, our jargon term for today is 504 plan. Now, we like to do this in a very specific way. We like to give you an actual definition that maybe has even more jargon in it. And then I like to make fun of that. And then we give you a working definition that maybe isn't as exact, but it gives you a feeling of, okay, what is this thing we're talking about and how does this work in my life? And is this something I need to find more information about? Is this something that will save me time and money? Is this something that will get us progress, get us to something that's meaningful to us? Because then you might want to ask some more questions about it. So today's term, 504 plan. How is it that in 8 years of doing this show, we have never done 504 plan before? Okay, so let's take a look at our actual definition for 504 plan. You ready? It's a lengthy one. The 504 plan is a plan. I'm going to need to see it, Traven, on the full screen, so give it back to us. Thank you. The 504 plan is a plan developed to ensure that a child who has a disability identified under the law and is attending an elementary or secondary educational institution receives accommodations that will ensure their academic success and access to the learning environment. Okay, well, you hear that and you go, isn't that called an IEP? No, actually, a 504 is a little bit different than an IEP, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But let's take a look at what our working definition for a 504 plan is, because that's going to help us to see some of the difference. Okay, so the 504 plan allows access and accommodations to education, but not special instruction. There are no goals and therefore no reporting. Okay, so let's tear this down just a little bit. If you have an IEP, and for those of you who are new to the community, don't feel like I should know what that is. Everybody didn't know what it was at one point, right? An IEP is an individualized education plan. And an IEP is a legal document that outlines everything that an individual needs in, and it could be as early as preschool, right? Up through graduating 12th grade high school. It includes goals, it includes special instruction plans, it includes accommodations, and it includes information about setting. Is this child going to be in a setting with neurotypical peers? Are they going to be mainstreamed in a regular classroom? Or are they going to be in a special day class? Or is it going to be a hybrid? They're going to be in a neurotypical class for history, but they're going to go to the special day class for math. I mean, it's very individualized because everybody is different. So an IEP lines that all out, and it includes potentially, often for kiddos on the autism spectrum, it includes something called a BIP. I know, more jargon, right? But a BIP is a behavior intervention plan, right? So that if we see challenging behavior, the way we will respond is this way. And that gets attached, and that whole thing becomes a legal document. Now, for kids who need special services, this is really important, because if it's on that document that that's what they get, right? And it can say, you know, we get 30 minutes of speech twice a week, right? That's special instruction. That's something extra that the rest of the kids in the classroom are not getting instruction-wise, that we're saying this individual needs in order to be successful and have a floor of opportunity to access the curriculum. Now, what drives that IEP is the IDEA. So Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And that is a very important act, and it allows for this IEP, and I'm holding it because often it's like a big document and it's legal. And if something doesn't happen in that big document, you say to the school, you're out of compliance, and they need to comply, right? So that, and it has all those things in it, and it's the recipe for success for a student who needs special education and special instruction, right? Okay, what about if the kid doesn't need special instruction? They don't need speech, they don't need OT, they just need accommodations. They're in a regular classroom and they don't need anybody extra instruction-wise, because they're able to do the classwork, right? But they need access to it because maybe they can't see. So they can do the work if the work is given to them in a format in which they have Braille, right? So that would be access. That would be an example of access. Maybe they can't hear. So maybe we need to make an accommodation and be able to have the teacher wear a microphone that goes to a headphone so that they can hear. 504 is about making it not equal, right? We always go back to that cartoon where the three kids are standing behind a curtain, and one kid is tall and he can see over the curtain because he's tall, and another kid, the curtain comes right to here on him, so he can only see part of what's happening and he can't see everything. And then there's a third child who isn't tall and he can't see anything, right? So that's when we have everything equal. But when we give equality to people, then for the person who can only see this much, we give him a riser so that puts his head over and he can see everything. And for the person who is not as tall, we give a bigger riser so that he or she can see everything, right? And that's kind of what the 504 plan is about. It's about making sure that everybody has a way in which we've leveled the playing field so everybody has the same chance. but nothing extra, no extra instruction, there's no extra teacher, there's no extra aid, because that isn't necessary for this person. Now here's what's interesting, is that when the IEP comes from IDEA, the 504 is part and parcel of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So when you are fighting over something, it's an entirely different set of circumstances, an entirely different set of laws. But one of the things that's super cool about a 504 plan is that there is a form of it's not exactly like the 504 that they have in elementary school and high school, but there is a 504 plan, and they do call it a 504 plan for college, that allows for accommodations. It's slightly different, and people get very hysterical when you tell them, no, it's the same, because it's not, right? But it's along the same lines, and it has the same kind of thinking, that this person is here because they can do the work. We just have to give them some accommodations. So what's an accommodation? An accommodation could be you get extra time to work on it. So I'm giving a test, and the accommodation that I'm giving is that these people only get 15 minutes in which to take this test. But the person with a 504, we found that that's not going to be possible for them. Maybe they have cerebral palsy, and writing takes them longer. It just, like, you know, the thoughts are all there, just like the person sitting next to them, that the physicalization of moving the pen literally will take them longer. So we're going to give them twice as much time, or 3 times as much time, whatever. It's still individual, right? So maybe we're going to have somebody else in the class taking notes for this person. Maybe, right? But that's not instruction. And so that is the big difference between the IEP and the 504. 504 doesn't allow for a plan for special instructions. It doesn't have goals. The IEP is all goal driven. So the goal might be this child will be able to write 3 sentences within 15 minutes, and we're working on that. And then we have to show progress on that, right? The 504 says, no, we're making accommodations, but there are no goals. Like he has to be able to write that faster. We're just giving you the accommodation. You get 3 times as much time. So different things for different people, and different people require different things. The things that are in a 504 plan, the accommodations, might be in an IEP plan, but the IEP plan has more, including that special instruction piece. The 504 plan, so just to be clear, you could have all the things in a 504 plan in an IEP. So you would never need both of them, right? The accommodations and the access would be part of the IEP. But some people don't need the IEP. Some people only need the 504, right? But if you need the IEP, you don't additionally need the 504. Does that make sense? So that is the 504 plan, and it's a wonderful thing for a lot of people. And not everyone needs an IEP, and not everyone on the autism spectrum needs an IEP. So there you have it. And some kids work their way off of an IEP and then are able to just need a 504. And some kids with autism get to the point where they no longer need the IEP and they no longer need the 504. It happens.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hey, welcome back to Autism Live. We heard you. Everybody wants
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, but we're gonna make it allergy free. But here's what's the crazy part of this macaroni and cheese. It's actually healthy.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes really good.
That's the most important part.
So we're gonna start, we got our water boiling. There's so many variations on the pasta. We're using today a corn pasta. We can verify with the manufacturer that we have a GMO-free product. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Ooh, and if you don't mind, stir that up for me, my friend.
Now it's sticking a little bit to the bottom, is that okay?
We maybe add a little more high heat oil and spread that around again. One thing you gotta know about gluten-free pasta, if you overcook this, it becomes mush. Let's move this guy over to the other burner so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're gonna start with the old macaroni and cheese sauce. What's great is there's a lot of choices for, you know, different soups. And the way that I look at soups, and again, please follow the recipe on your screen right now. I don't like to measure very often, but what I like to use is a creamy butternut squash soup. So this soup is great because it adds a lot of flavor to the dish, but also gives people another serving of vegetables. With kids, we don't want to over season. Maybe with the adults, we can season some for the kids first, pull it out, serve them, and then add a little more, you know, garlic powder or onion powder or other types of things into your dish. So the next most important thing on this recipe is we're going to add in a thickener and the faux cheese. Now some people like their sauce really thick, so you just add in more cornstarch or more arrowroot, so that's not a big deal. How's that doing? You think it's ready?
I think it's done.
Okay, so why don't we switch? I'll take that, you do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to strain this bad boy here. Here, let me turn that off.
Okay.
Or we're going to cause trouble again.
Trouble in Lisa's kitchen.
Yeah, no!
That's another show.
Don't, yeah, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get this all strained. It's a good consistency. So I'm going to check to make sure our pasta is cooked. So really you just want to make sure, just like any pasta, it's a little bit squeezy, a little bit. Nice. Dude, good job.
Yay.
We're good.
Looks yummy.
So even though the cheese is not totally melted, it's okay, don't panic. What's important is that you're gonna love this recipe once you eat it. What I enjoy most about this recipe is that it smells good, but this stuff
perfect.
is amazing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to serve you some up, and you can maybe blow a little bit on it so you don't burn your mouth. Sorry, I'm once a mom, always a mom.
Just like we tell our kids.
I know, right?
God, I can't wait. I'm excited.
So I'm gonna give a shot of this too, but
Oh my gosh, that is so good.
this is the ultimate comfort food. So
Oh, it's so
isn't
good.
it good?
And I'm not just saying that. It is really good. It literally tastes like something our kids would really like. And that sweetness is really, really, really good.
So the bonus for us is that when we're serving this to our kids, they're actually getting a full serving of vegetables in this. So instead of just eating a bunch of carbs and worthless calories, you're actually getting some good stuff in this. And we'll be back next time. I hope you join us again here on Autism Live. We're really loving the feedback, and if you have additional feedback, here's how you get it to us. You can send it to us via email at autismlive@gmail.com. On Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. And also there's thousands of recipes waiting for you to discover them with pictures and different things on the 𝗃𝗏 website. So you can hit 𝗃𝗏 on the web, 𝗃𝗏now.org, and we'll be back. Hopefully we'll get to do this again.
I had so much
Maybe
fun.
we'll have a little wine, but you got to join us next time. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye guys. We're gonna keep eating.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
We like to start Mondays with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are the experts talking about, and why do I need to know this? Why are you hurting my head with this information? We give you first the actual definition. I then like to make as much fun of that as I can possibly muster, because it feels like that's all there is to do with that definition. And then we give you the working definition, which hopefully gives you a beginning understanding of what this is and why it might be valuable to you. If it doesn't the first time around, I want to encourage you to, we put these videos separately on a playlist so that you can go and you'll hear that term again and you're like, wait a second, what does that mean again? And you'll go in and listen to the video again and go, oh, okay, I sort of see that with what they were talking about. Watch it again and again. Some of these things, it's taken me years to be like, oh, now I get it, right? And that's okay. We're just working towards a direction. So I don't know that we've ever done this jargon term, and I love that more and more of you are writing in with requests for jargon. Please bring them. We want to build that playlist. So today's term is manned frame. Don't you just wonder what the heck that means? Doesn't it sound like something you'd stick under your bed, right? What has this got to do with autism? Well, you might have heard us do the definition of a mand before. So if you know that, you're like, I don't understand what a frame would be. So let's take a look at what our actual definition for a mand frame is. It is differing forms of request. For example, when teaching the child to request desired objects, items, different mands frames such as I want object, can I have object, give me object, can be taught. Well, okay. As definitions go, it's not the worst one, right? But if you don't know what a mand is, I remember me sitting there with the big book that they told me, this is the book that's going to help you, right? And I'd read something and I'd go, okay, I don't know what a mand frame is. So now I go back to the back of the book, mand frame. By the way, this came about after years of looking things up on Google and getting no closer to anywhere, but I got the big book, right? Mand frame. Okay, I don't remember what a mand is. Now I gotta, what's a mand, right? And then that had another word in that. Now I'm flipping the book. What's this? 5 definitions down the road, I'm lost, right? And I gotta go back to mand frame and try to piece the whole thing back together. Okay, let's start with mand. And I always say, think of the word command, right? So it's that last part of it, mand. And it's about commanding. Whenever somebody asks for something, it's a mand. So the child says to you, they're manding for something, they're just not manding efficiently. What is the child grunting? They're holding their hand out and they're grunting for something. What is it that they want? Oh, they want the cookie. So what we start to do is start to tighten up that mand so that when they request it, they get it, which means it's got to be more efficient, right? Mom knows means I want cookie, right? But then when they go to preschool and they go are they going to get the cookie? Maybe, but maybe not, right? We want to have it be very efficient, because when a mand gets you what you want, then you will mand and not throw things. Because if you go and you don't get the cookie, eventually a child will shove things out of the way or try to grab the cookie, or potentially even bite someone to get the cookie. I want my cookie, right? So we want to start to build a more efficient way of manding for it, requesting, commanding, right? I want the cookie. So we would start off by doing an approximation of the sound. So they want cookie, so we would start k, which is like, because I don't know whether you're asking for the cookie or the juice, right? But if you're going, I don't know. And it's going to be like a 50-50 shot of which one did you really get your needs met, right? Frustration is going to ensue. So we start to teach k, which helps me to know, oh, you want the cookie, right? And then the child begins, now we want to shape it up, k, oh, and then cookie, right? So now the child is manding very specifically for the cookie, right? But what happens a lot with a lot of speech programs, and I've seen this, there are a lot of great SLPs out there, speech and language pathologists, but there are some working in schools who know how to get to a child to request something for a mand, and they know how to get a child to label something. So, they put the cup there and they say cup, and the child says cup. Great. Manding is when they would request the cup, right? But parents will write in all the time and say, how come we're not getting to sentences? How come we're not getting to conversation? And I'll tell you why, because they're not doing the mand frame. The mand frame is the next step. And there's all these steps that get you to conversation. So we teach them to mand. And why manding? Because it's rewarding to them. If I can go and I get my cookie, great. Right? I don't need to know anything else. But if sometimes I don't get the cookie, I'm now motivated to learn how to vocally say cookie if I have the facility to be able to do that. And some kids don't. We need to be mindful of that. But then we teach them how to picture exchange. That's still manding because I'm requesting the cookie and we want it to work, right? Or we give them adaptive communication so that they push the thing and it says cookie for them, right? That's manding too. Pointing is manding. But we want to get it as efficient as possible, right? Because we want to keep that frustration at bay. So eventually we get the child to say cookie, and then we want to teach them, whether it's on the iPad or whether it's with icons or with speech, we want them to say, want cookie. Okay, want cookie. And then we say, want cookie, please. And then we add, I want cookie, please. And we're teaching it in lots of different ways so that it's not always the same. These are the manned frames. It's like building a car, right? The train. So, we've got the main thing, which was the request for the thing you want, but we have to start hitching other things, other cars to this train so that eventually the child says, I want a cookie, please. Can I have a cookie, please? Give me the car, right? We want to find as many different ways to do it as we possibly can. That's manned frames. And it's important that you do the manned frames because they will want the thing, right? Because if I want a cookie, I want a cookie. And if I can get the cookie by saying to you, cookie, I will. If I need to say want cookie, to get it, I'm willing to do that. It takes a second more. And I want a cookie, please, takes just one more second more. And if I know that every time I do that, I get it. And in the beginning, every time we give them what they want if they ask for it. That's a really important part of this, that they have to get that reinforcer. Later on, you're going to say, we're going to work on waiting. No, you can't have a cookie right now, but you can have one in 5 minutes, right? And then, no, we can't have a cookie until you eat your vegetables. We're going to put contingency on. No, you can't have a cookie at all, right? We'll work towards, but in the beginning, you got to make it every time. Because it's hard to learn how to talk in the beginning, especially for our kids. So, but once you start getting man frames, full sentence, then you can start to work on other types of conversation that aren't quite as reinforcing. The reinforcement in the man frame is, I asked for it, I got it. Immediate, right? I want the ice cream, you give me the ice cream. Saying, when you say to your kid, how did it go at school today? There's nothing reinforcing there, right? But if we teach them that, this is how you do this, and then you respond, and then I'll leave you alone, right? It happens. Conversation happens, but it starts with manding and then man frame and then branching out from there. We can talk about those jargon terms later on, but man frame, it's an important part of this journey to conversation. Don't let anybody leave it out.